All right, everybody, it's 7:41. We are on the heels of bowls being announced. We are on the heels of Virginia Tech becoming a first-place team in the ACC after one game of ACC play. We have chaos, we have anger, we have elation. We have a lot to talk about. So, Ed, we got a little joint podcast here. We are going to talk about bowl season. We're going to talk about Virginia Tech's bowl. We're going to talk about the playoff, and we're going to talk about basketball. So start with basketball, moving into bowl stuff. Kind of free balling here, okay? No underwear, just kind of free balling on this podcast. But that's what we're going to do tonight. Ed, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm glad Virginia Tech was able to eke out a win against Louisville. That one was way more stressful than I had anticipated it being for the majority of the game, but they were able to get things done. We got our bowl announced after just a disgustingly long delay by the ACC. I think our bowl might have been the last one announced, so that was kind of frustrating. But Hokie's got a win, Hokie's got a bowl, so it's exciting times in Blacksburg. But if we're going to talk basketball, Mike and I haven't recorded since before the Auburn game, so we'll touch on this first. But who better to talk about the Auburn game than someone who made the drive down there himself? Billy Ray Mitchell was in the building on Auburn's campus. So how was your trip to Auburn? Thoughts on the arena, thoughts on the town? Brag on Auburn for a second.
I mean, Auburn's awesome. Very, very similar to Virginia Tech in terms of like layout, school culture. Fun fact, Auburn's campus was designed architecturally by the same person who designed UVA's campus. Thought that was pretty cool. I went down with my godfather, John Margadana. He went to Auburn, was on one of those unclaimed national title teams when Bo Jackson was there. Anyway, he had never been to a game. He went to school with Charles Barkley. Said he was too busy. Never had a chance to go over. Virginia Tech lost this game 57-74. Before we dive into the basketball side of things, I'm going to give you my Billy Ray usually watches football, but has fun at basketball games. So here's his high level thoughts. Number one, Auburn, really awesome place to watch a basketball game. Very, I don't want to call it intimate, but it reminded me a lot of Carnesecca Stadium in the Bronx, which is where St. John's plays when they're not at Madison Square Garden. The student body, or as they call it, I think they call it the jungle, is right up on the court, right behind the press box. It was loud. I saw a couple of tweets. I probably did a bad job videoing it, but it was sold out. It was posted everywhere that was sold out. It was loud. The fans were into it. They were excited. And the one thing that really stood out was from beginning to end, wow, Auburn is so athletic. They're so long, and they can play a ton of dudes. There were a ton of fouls in this game. It seemed like they could just throw body after body after body on the court, and never got tired. A lot of pressure, full court press. Those were kind of my very high level observations.
Yeah, Auburn is a really cool town. I think it's very similar to Blacksburg, just a little bit bigger and with better weather. But yeah, I think you're spot on. Johnny Broome was the best player on the floor, and we kind of knew that going into the game. He had 30 for Auburn. He was fantastic. And like you just mentioned, they play a lot of guys. They had 10 guys play double-digit minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. And, I mean, obviously some of that was due to mop-up duty, but like K.D. Johnson played 12 minutes. That's a guy who plays a lot for them.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there for a long time playing in Bruce Pro system. So they play a lot of guys. They're really, really physical. They absolutely hound you. That's Coach Pearl's style. And then they've got a guy in Johnny Broome who had 30 and 7, and they've got a 5-star point guard, true freshman Aiden Holloway, who didn't even score in this game. It was really just kind of Broome and a bunch of dudes playing really good defense. Virginia Tech turned the ball over 21 times. Outrageously bad. That's a horrible number.
Pretty crazy thing to look at as well. It's a crazy box score to look at if you just want to go back and look at it. Two leading scorers of the game were Broome and Cam Baker Mazzara. They had 30 and 15. But then if you look at everybody else that played for Auburn, and I'm just talking about guys who scored points, there were a lot of zeros on here. 2, 2, 3, 9, 2, 3, 8, and then a bunch of zeros. So it was really a two-man show when it came to scoring. But an unbelievable amount. I'm trying to find how many free throws were shot in this game. Let me also say that free throws were not the reason that we lost this basketball game, and fouls was not the reason that we lost this basketball game. I was actually shocked that Virginia Tech was able to hold it together for as long as they were. In the beginning of the game, Auburn jumps out to a huge lead, and then there are these stretches where Auburn would miss really good looks. And Virginia Tech was actually able to keep it in that like 7 to 12 range. And then towards the end of the game, it got out of control.
There was fouls wise, there was 24 on Auburn, 25 on Virginia Tech. Auburn shot 36 free throws. We shot 31. So it was a lot of that going on all night on both sides. Made life difficult. That's what Auburn does. It's a cool environment. It's a tenacious hounding type program and style that they play. And Virginia Tech just didn't handle it well. I thought it might have been the worst game of Sean Padula's career at Virginia Tech. Honestly, he really, really struggled with all that ball pressure and didn't get a whole lot of help in terms of alleviating it. He had 4 points. He had 7 turnovers. So just a brutal game. But that's kind of what Auburn does. They speed you up. They play really physical. They make you turn the ball over, and then they take advantage on the other end. So Virginia Tech just didn't handle that pressure well against a really good team. I'm good to move on from that one.
Yeah, couple last things. I mean, again, just box score funnies here. Auburn shot 38% and shot 12.5% from 3. This is one of those games you don't just bury the tape because you want to forget about the result. You bury the tape because it was one of the worst. It was one of the most hideous basketball games I've ever watched. But had a great time at Auburn. Had a great time at that Coliseum. Would love to go back for football. Would love to go back for basketball.
Oh, it's an elite place to go see football. Jordan Hare is awesome. One bright spot was Jaden Young when I shot him out. 24 minutes off the bench. He had 9 points, 3 of 4 from 3. He played really well in the most amount of minutes he's played in his young career. So shout out to Jaden Young and Brandon Reckshiner with his sick falling away hook shot to end the first half. That was a pretty cool little play too. So
let me say one more thing. That we've moved past this dialogue, but it was something that was happening in the moment that really bothered me. A lot of people were like complaining that this was poor scheduling on Virginia Tech's part, that the men had to go to Auburn and the women had to go to LSU. I would love, even if this is the result, to be testing our teams in environments like this. Like if your attitude is like, we're going to difficult place to play against good team to play against, and you're anti that, I don't understand that thought process at all. It's how you make your teams better. Virginia Tech women's basketball will be, I know we're talking about the men right now, but Virginia Tech women's basketball will be better for after their experience at LSU. I believe the men's team will be better after their time at Auburn. So I just wanted to mention that. I thought that was pretty ridiculous dialogue.
They also have no control over it. So
yeah. So whatever. Louisville.
ACC play, the very odd thing the ACC does where they start ACC play a week before they actually start ACC play. So our first game was Louisville at home, a team that was projected to finish very, very near the bottom, if not the bottom of the ACC. And I'll talk about why I think that's kind of unfair in a second. But Virginia Tech knocked off Louisville by a score of 75-68 in a game where they were favored by like 14. So Virginia Tech did not cover. In large part due to the fact, and I talked about this on the Twitter space after the game, tune into those if you want to talk basketball after the game ends. We always do those on Sons of Saturday's Twitter page. We struggled to shoot the ball from the guys who really know how to do it. Tyler Nickel, 1 of 6 from 3. Sean Padula, 0 of 3. Hunter Couture, 1 of 3. Your 3 best shooters, who in my opinion all are kind of like 40% 3-point shooters, combined for 2 of 12. I think if those guys even have a slightly decent shooting night, we run away with this thing, win by double digits, and nobody's worried. But they struggled from 3, and as a result, the offense had some stagnant points. And they were saved by a combination of Lynn Kidd and MJ Collins in his first game back from his brief injury that he had. MJ Collins had his best game of his career, a best game of his year, maybe the best game of his career. I'd have to go back and look at that, but MJ was awesome, and Lane Kidd continues to just be an absolute dominating force in the interior. And I know Billy Ray's a big Lane Kidd guy. So,
extremely impressed with MJ Collins. Really happy for him because the dialogue around him, understandably so, over the last couple of games has been pretty negative. the one thing or a couple of things that I want to point out. We mentioned this on the space. I want to mention it here as well. Virginia Tech was able to get to the free throw line 27 times. They were able to make 22 of their free throws. I think that's something that in Mike Young's career, we have struggled with, getting to the free throw line and making free throws. This is one of the better free throw shooting teams in the country. I think that that's made a huge difference. If you go back and you look at the games that we've played well in versus the games that we've gotten handled, the free throw line pays a big dividend in that. Do you have any other thoughts on the game? I have a couple of like moving forward, big picture questions about the basketball team. If I had to mention anything else, I don't really have anything crazy outside of that, except for the fact that this was another game where in the last 5 minutes, it was a combination of Louisville doing stupid things with the basketball and Virginia Tech playing opportunistic defense down the stretch. So those are my last two observations on this game specifically.
Yeah, I want to talk about Louisville for a second, just because I don't think they're getting enough credit. They're not as bad as they were last year, right? They've already matched their win total for last year, which is insane. But their 4 losses were a weird one to Chattanooga, then they lost to Texas by 1, lost to Indiana by 8, and now they lose to Virginia Tech on the road. They're not as bad as they were projected to be. And I was shocked when I looked this up. Billy Ray dropped, so I'll just keep going by myself. Louisville has 8 4-stars on their roster. I was pretty blown away when I saw that stat after the game. They have 8 4-stars and a 5-star on that roster. So there's not a lack of talent on Louisville's basketball team right now. And I think that they'll figure out how to get things going as the season progresses. But Sky Clark is a guy who came out of high school extremely highly rated. Huntley, Hatfield, who had 14 and 9 tonight, was 5-star recruit. So there's no shortage of talent on that roster, and I think they'll find ways to put it together and be competitive in the ACC. And I thought Virginia Tech did a really good job handling their athletic ability in order to squeak out this win. But overall, not a whole lot to talk about here with this game. It was just really poor shooting, and then Lynn Kidd and MJ Collins balling out and bailing Virginia Tech out. But again, I've talked about this with MJ Collins, and now progression to the mean there tonight for him. I expect the same for Hunter Couture, Sean Padula, and Tyler Nickel as the year goes on. Everyone's going to get back to where they should be in terms of their shooting percentages when the season's all said and done. Those 3 guys are not going to combine to go 2 of 12 on good, clean looks from 3 most nights. So turn the page on to Valparaiso. But what were your finishing thoughts here on basketball?
Yeah. Before we get into kind of like their overall ACC, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. I think the success of this basketball team hinges on 2 things. Number one, and we were talking about this on the phone, the team's not going to be very good if Sean Padula is not very good. Sean Padula is talented. Sean Padula can score. Sean Padula can dish the ball out. Sean Padula has proven that he can be one of the best point guards in the ACC. He has had a very tough 5-game stretch. I went ahead and pulled his last 5 games. In the last 5 games, he's 17 for 56, which is 30%, 21 turnovers, 19 assists. Again, not being hard on Sean. He's having a really, really difficult time. The team's going to struggle if he struggles. That's just the way it's going to be. So that's number one. Number two, we've said it on basically every podcast, every space, everything. This team has to find a way to get a third scorer. You have Sean Padula when he's playing well. You have Hunter Couture, and then you have Lynn Kidd, who's kind of serving as one. But out of Robbie Beeran, out of Tyler Nickel, out of MJ Collins stepping up for a game, you have to have 3 options. The Hokies have like 1.5 right now. So a lot of these guys are shooting uncharacteristically bad right now. But if this team is going to take that step and put itself in a conversation to be a tournament team, they're going to have to identify another scoring guard. I don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I've been kind of beating that horse for a while now. Tonight it was MJ Collins. I think we don't play again until Saturday. Saturday it might be Tyler Nickel. You could be nights where it's Brandon Rechsteiner, but somebody every night has to be, in addition to Sean Padula, Hunter Couture, and Lynn Kidd, scoring the basketball. And so far, they've gotten next to no offensive production from the 4 spot, which is a combination of Barron and Long, who I'll talk about really quickly in a second. So you need a wing to be able to be a scoring threat. And maybe MJ Collins likes coming off the bench because he looked a lot more like himself today than he has in any game to this point this season. I mean, he looked just like MJ Collins from last year in terms of his explosion, his attitude, his ability to get to the rim, draw fouls. He was 7 of 7 from the line tonight. And then he even knocked down some threes, which is he literally had not done until tonight. So maybe MJ Collins likes to come off the bench. Who knows?
With him too, it wasn't necessarily that he wasn't scoring. I'm not going to come on here and say MJ Collins is a phenomenal scorer. He just looked he looked like a freshman. He looked like a guy in all of the games this year. He looked like a guy who hadn't played minutes before, and that's not what we're expecting out of MJ. And I'm hoping that whether it's coming off the bench, whether it's taking a few games that he did, or a game or a few games, we play so unoften and off routine. I have no idea how many games we play when a week.
Yeah, we got to get to ACC play.
Like I have no idea how many games in a week we play. We can play 1, we can play 3. I have no idea. But very much looked like, if you don't look at the box score, looked like the guy that we kind of expect in terms of his body language and everything else. So you want to talk about Mekhi Long? Start it off.
I mean, I just love him. I love watching him play. I love watching him play. Like, he just bails you out all the time. It steals constantly, pushing the ball up the floor is something that he does really well that a couple, like, we kind of lack sometimes. He's pretty good at that. And the rebounding is out of control. Like, he gets every rebound when he's on the floor. He had 8 tonight. He had 2 on offense. Honestly, felt like he had more than that.
Yeah.
At one point, almost he had like 15 rebounds. I was shocked to see he only had 8. But he's just awesome. I mean, he fills that role and fills it so perfectly. 27 minutes tonight off the bench. He started the second half. I wonder if that's foreshadowing of things to come. But he had 27 minutes tonight to Barron's 13. Just love watching him play. He's just absolute grinder and something this team needs desperately.
Talk about a team. I'm looking at kind of the splits here for this game. Virginia Tech outscored Louisville. What was it? 31-10 on the bench. Louisville only played 1 player off the bench for more than 6 minutes, and that was T. Johnson. So, look, good win. The last big picture thing I want to say. So if you look at it right now, the latest KenPom numbers have Virginia Tech sitting at 66. You mentioned getting into ACC play, and you mentioned the importance of you're going to have very few opportunities to get big wins when we get out of conference play here. I mean, we're talking about Vermont being a big game. It is. They beat Yale today. I'll retweet how they beat Yale. It was pretty crazy. But if you go ahead and you look at KenPom for the ACC, not your typical ACC. The teams that are ranked ahead of us right now in KenPom, North Carolina comes in at 12, Duke 17, Virginia 27, Clemson 28. So only 4 teams in the top 30. Then you got to do a little bit of scrolling. 46, Miami. I think they'll move up. Pittsburgh 57. And then you get to Virginia Tech at 66, followed by NC State at 68, Florida State at 71, Wake Forest at 74. So ACC play.
Wait, where was Clemson?
Where did I not say Clemson? I might have missed Clemson. Clemson's at 28.
I was going to say,
right
if they're not up there, then KenPom
they are.
Scratch his program.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, yeah, look, the KenPom thing this early in the year, I don't care about at all. I don't know how you can for the most part. Like, Duke is young. They're young every year. They're not great every year. And then all of a sudden they're right there at the end. They're 5-3 right now. But Clemson's 7-0, North Carolina 7-1, Virginia's 7-1, Miami's 6-1, NC State's 5-2, Texas 6-3. I think this conference will end up being just fine. But every year the whole national perspective is the ACC is not good at basketball anymore, and then 4 ACC teams make runs to the Sweet 16. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? It's still a good conference of basketball. Let's stop pretending like it's not.
Well, you don't think it's down over previous years. The days of finishing 8, 9, 10 in the ACC, you're probably not feeling great about getting into March.
Oh, well, no, it's probably but I saw Lenardi's first stupid bracketology had it as a 5-team league. I was like, get out of here with that.
Yeah.
Clemson's not a tournament team. Miami's not a tournament team. Duke, Virginia, North Carolina, there's 5 right there. So I think, Virginia Tech's going to be competing for the 6th or 7th spot in the conference I think at most it's 7. It's a 7 bid league, as that's how most leagues are. Even the best league at any given year is like an 8 bid league. So they're going to be competing with NC State. They're going to be competing with Georgia Tech, who I think is sneaky good. Wake Forest, who we'll have as our first real game of ACC play. And then Syracuse has some talent. So it's going to be interesting how it shakes out. But there will be plenty of chances to get quad 1 and quad 2 wins, I guess is my overall point.
Last thing on basketball. Do you have any thoughts on the ACC SEC challenge that finished tie? Oh no, I definitely love it, but tied 7-7. Couple of interesting matchups. You saw Virginia handled business against Texas A&M. Texas A&M is banged up right now. Take that with a grain of salt. North Carolina scored 100 points on Tennessee. Boston College beat Vanderbilt. We talked about Virginia Tech, and then Duke lost to Arkansas. Any thoughts on that? Louisville did not participate due to there being a difference in how many teams are in each conference, but did you have any other thoughts on the ACC SEC challenge?
I mean, Georgia Tech beat a ranked 6-1 Mississippi State team. Clemson handled Alabama. That was a really big win for Clemson. South Carolina, who we lost to, and everyone told me the sky was falling, is 6-0. LSU got destroyed by Syracuse. Across the board, I thought it was pretty even competition, and I think very highly of the SEC and their basketball programs right now. So I thought it was awesome. I'm excited for it to swing back to Blacksburg next year. That'll be really cool. I mean, traditionally, the way these things work is if you're on the road one year, you host the next. So in theory, the Virginia Tech men and women should be hosting games in this challenge next year, which would be a pretty cool thing for Blacksburg. Hopefully it's like back-to-back nights the way it was. But no, I love it. I think it's awesome. And there were some really good games and some interesting results. I mean, Miami struggled against Kentucky. Kentucky's really good. But Kentucky beats Miami and then they lose to UNC Wilmington. It's just a weird time of the year. Don't take too much from any of this.
We good on basketball?
Yeah, flip the page. Football time.
All right. We have no notes. We're more so just reacting to the craziness that happened with the playoff announcement today. I want to start this with this. It is what is the playoff? What is the invitational? What is written down on what their responsibilities are? So the college football playoff, I went over to their website, easily accessible. You can find it very easily. The selection committee's task will be to select the best teams in the selected other games and then assign the teams to sites. Here's the criteria. The selection committee will select the teams it wishes amongst otherwise comparable teams by considering championships won, strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, comparative outcomes of common opponents without incenting margin of victory, and other relevant factors such as unavailability of key players and coaches that may affect the team's performance during the season or likely will affect its postseason performance. With that said, Ed, how did you feel about the field that they put out? Michigan #1, Washington #2. Feel like that's completely agreeable, understandable. Texas at #3, and Alabama bumping Florida State for that 4th spot. What was your initial reaction?
That was exactly what I had tweeted out the night before. That's what I wanted it to be. That's what I thought it should be, and it's for exactly that #5 metric or check box that Florida State didn't check. It's unfortunate. I feel bad for Florida State. I feel bad for Jordan Travis more than anything else. But they have 5 criteria, and they very, very clearly don't meet one of them, and that is unavailability of key players. I mean, he's a Heisman level quarterback who, when they didn't play for them their last 2 games, they looked suspect against. People will say, "Oh, they beat a ranked Louisville team." Okay, Louisville lost to a middle of the level SEC team the week before. So if we're going to play this game, let's play this game. I just feel bad for Florida State. I feel horrible for Jordan Travis, but they are not a top 4 team without him. I think if they play their entire schedule without him this year, Virginia Tech finishes higher than Florida State does. It is what it is. And I think Alabama on the same night that Florida State passed for 55 yards, Alabama beat a team that had won 29 straight games, including 2 national championships. You can't just ignore that. Those two things happened at the same time. And I don't really think it's as much of an Alabama versus Florida State thing as it is a Texas versus Florida State thing. Because if Georgia had won, Georgia would have been number 1, Michigan would have been number 2, Washington would have been number 3, and based on what the committee did today, Texas would have been number 4, and Florida State's still out. So Florida State needed to look convincing offensively in either the Florida or the Louisville game, and they just didn't. And it's unfortunate, but injuries are part of this. I mean, if Michael Penix goes down, how good is Washington? Probably not very. So it sucks. And I don't think it's an indictment on the ACC. I don't think it's an indictment on anything other than that was the 5th piece of criteria that is clearly laid out on that document you just read, and Jordan Travis is hurt. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Number one, I think that they ended on the correct result. I do think that a couple of the things that the committee did over the last couple of weeks put them in a little bit of a bad situation. For example, in week 13, the committee, understanding that Jordan Travis was hurt, left Florida State in the top 4. As soon as Jordan Travis got hurt, if you set the expectation of bumping Florida State to 5, 6, or 7, they moved them to 5, but if you put them at 7 or 6, you set the expectation that they have to come out and they have to win games. If you think back to 2014, everybody loves to reference the 2014 Ohio State team. Ohio State went and won their title game like 53 or 59-0. They beat the piss out of Wisconsin. They left no doubt that they should be in, and they had some inferior teams that were listed, and they went on to win the national championship. When I went ahead and I tweeted that this is bad for college football, I'm not referencing that it's bad for the product that we're going to watch. It's not bad because the committee didn't do their job. They very much lived up to what they were supposed to do. It just bothers me that you're setting the expectation that on the field results don't seem to matter as much as they should. Now they did when you look at Texas, because a lot of people were saying, well, if you leave Florida State in, you bump Texas out, you put Alabama in. And if I'm taking Texas or Alabama, even I am going through this thought exercise of, well, Alabama's better, they should be in. Well, if you lose the head-to-head, you cannot do that. You can unequivocally cannot do that. It sucks. This is the first year that genuinely the number 4 was a serious problem. I think if you had 8, you're looking at a really, really, really fun playoff. You got Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, Alabama, Texas, Washington, Michigan. Everybody's happy. Nobody is clamoring over the fact that Missouri and Penn State are not in the playoff. But from a viewership standpoint, I'm fired up about this playoff. Do you have any initial thoughts on who you feel really good about? I tweeted the video out earlier. I think Alabama is gonna. I think Alabama is gonna I think Alabama's going to cause some people some problems.
Yeah, I like Alabama a lot. And one last thing on the Florida State issue. I don't think it's setting the expectation that playing the games doesn't matter, because they played 2 games and they looked horrible offensively, and that mattered. If they had played really well or played competently, they would have just brushed over the fact, like, they wouldn't have kept them out. And if Jordan Travis is healthy, they're probably the 2 seed in this thing. So I don't know. I don't think it's an indictment on anything other than there was a very key player injured. That's one of the criteria, and it cost them, and that sucks. They passed for 134 yards against Florida and 55 against Louisville. I did not want to see that against Michigan. That is not one of the best 4 teams in the country, period. I don't know how you can argue it one way or the other that way. But
can I split a hair? Huh? Can I split a hair here? I have one qualm with the top 6 that came out.
Oh, yeah.
I did not understand why Ohio State was not even referenced or talked about. Should they made the
right?
Excuse me, they were ranked 7th. So to me, if your worst loss and only loss is to the number 1 team in your playoff, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just crazy how the
Where did you want them over?
I would have them in the top 6. I would probably have them over Georgia. I mean, what was the ranking last week? So
I don't know how you can have them over Georgia, though. Georgia. So
here's how you have them over Georgia, because Georgia this week lost to the 8th ranked college football playoff team this week. When Ohio State lost to Michigan, Michigan was the 2nd highest ranked team in the college football playoff. So, it just didn't make a ton of sense to me. Excuse me. They lost to the 3rd ranked team who eventually became the consensus number 1. So it's just weird, right? Because you look at it, you're heading into the final week of the season. Georgia pitches a no-hitter for almost 700 days, 800 days, has played amazing football. You lose a 1-score game in the SEC title game, and you are completely out of the playoff. You look at Ohio State, plays great all year, has a better schedule than Michigan. You lose 1 game by less than a touchdown on the road to the number 1 team, and you do not make the playoff. This is the problem with 4. This is the problem when you have some conferences that are really damn good. And my last observation from title weekend was I thought from Jump Street that the 9.5 point line for Washington, Oregon was, I can't think of a better word than disrespectful. I really did. I thought as soon as I saw that line, I took Washington. There's been a lot of hype around Oregon. At the end of the day, they played 1 team all year, and that was Washington. You can argue with me about Oregon State. They played really well against Oregon State. That's fine. But Washington, man, I think when I'm looking at this field, Washington is the one team that I think can maybe give Alabama problems, not necessarily because they'll match up athletically or especially in the trenches. They just can flat out score. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited about it. Any last thoughts on the playoff before we dive into some of the other bowl games?
I think the 2 matchups are also really cool stylistically. Alabama, Michigan. I think the over-under when I looked at that was like 40, and then Texas, Washington is like 63. So I think it's going to be 2 very differing styles of games, which will be fun to watch as well. I'm excited to watch Quinn Ewers, man. That guy can really spin the ball. Then the Texas wide receivers and the Washington wide receivers are both just elite rooms. So that game's going to be really fun. And then I think Michigan, Alabama is going to be an absolute slugfest. So I'm excited for both the games.
It's also fun to know that it's not one side of the bracket is probably your national championship. I mean, Texas, Washington, Michigan, Alabama, you're not saying, okay, well, if one team wins this game, they're going to win the title. I feel like
this is the most like even it's been in a long time.
So we had bowl games come out. We'll talk about Virginia Tech last. I just had a couple of high-level observations here. So a common fun theme that you're seeing is the Big Ten versus the SEC. It's the 2 conferences that everybody kind of puts on a level above everybody else. And you're going to see these 2 conferences go head to head a ton. You got Auburn versus Maryland, LSU versus Wisconsin, which I thought was interesting. I thought Wisconsin got a little bit of an unfavorable draw. Then you have Iowa, Tennessee, Missouri, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Penn State, Michigan, Alabama. I think those are all going to be tremendous. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I don't feel like we have gotten a lot of these like Big Ten SEC matchups. I don't feel like that. I'd be surprised if there was a year where there were 6 of these bowl matchups, and we get them all this year. So really excited about that. Any other bowl games that really interest you? I'm looking at them right now. It's so frustrating that you have no idea who's going to play in these games. So I would suggest if you have a good feel on some of these really large lines that somebody's not going to play, maybe jump on them. I'm just going to scroll down here and look at some of the games. So you got Oregon playing Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. That'll be in Glendale, Arizona. 19.5 point line there. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any thoughts on any of these.
I think Nix is playing, by the way. I think Lanning, Bo Nix is going to play.
Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta. You got Ole Miss and Penn State, 1.5 point line. I think that has an opportunity to be a lot of fun. I would have loved to see that game in the regular season with everybody playing. Who knows? We'll play now. Missouri versus Ohio State. I texted my buddy Casey, who's an Ohio State guy. Drinkowitz or Elia or whatever his name is, gets on there. He's making whatever his name is, man. He's making jokes. He goes, I'm getting a call from Connor Stallions. He's doing this literally on the selection show. I got to do some scout on Ohio State. He goes, yeah, that's spoken like a guy that's just happy to be there. And I said, that's spoken like somebody who's not happy to be there and an Ohio State fan. So got a 7.5 line there. Florida State taking on Georgia. I think depending on how badly Georgia wants to be there, that could be a hideous result on the field there. Iowa, Tennessee, man, that is another hideous game. Tony, the Tiger Bowl, Notre Dame versus Oregon State. Think that has a chance to be pretty fun. Maryland, Auburn, that'll be fun. Arizona, Oklahoma. It just sucks, man. I'm looking at all these games. I have no idea who's going to play. Texas A&M versus Oklahoma State. Is anybody from Texas A&M going to play in that game? Is anybody going to play? Half that team's going to be in the portal. So I don't know. Virginia Tech gets the Military Bowl as we expected. Everybody was thrown into a little bit of a tizzy because the ACC, in ACC fashion, or whoever was responsible for it, was not anticipating Florida State missing the bowl games or the playoffs. So when they do, everybody's bidding over these final teams, and Virginia Tech does end up in the Military Bowl. But West Virginia was in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, and then you start going through these scenarios in your head. You're like, oh my gosh, we could have a Black Diamond matchup in Charlotte, and they might take UNC, but will they take UNC? Because UNC was they just ate a ton of mayo 2 years ago. They were just in the Mayo kickoff game this year. They can't possibly want any more mayonnaise. So UNC should probably go get a physical, check out their cholesterol levels, because for the third time in 600 days, they're going to be playing in some sort of Duke's affiliated fiesta going on here. So initial thoughts on Annapolis. Taking on Tulane, who is a very good football team. Their quarterback, not sure if he's going to play. Their coach took another job. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's an interesting matchup. I'm glad it's not SMU, just because SMU is about to be in the ACC, so I didn't really want to play them in a bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if Michael Pratt's going to play. Obviously, they don't have a coach at the moment, so it'll be an interim situation there. I don't know a whole lot about Tulane other than, they were 11-2 this year, and they slipped up and lost to SMU. Otherwise, they would have been in a New Year's Six Bowl where Liberty is. Had a great season. They beat USC in their bowl game last year. Good football program, but it sounds like they might have a lot of opt-outs and transfer portals and things like that, which you'd expect from a good team who's going to have guys go to the NFL and when they lose their coach. So it'll be interesting to see which Tulane team shows up, but overall, it's a cool matchup we're not going to get very often in a place where there'll be a lot of Hokies. And it seems like Virginia Tech should have a pretty good showing in terms of players. APR announced he's back. I would assume that means he plays in the bowl game, which will be exciting. Other than that, we haven't really had a whole lot of transfer portaling in Blacksburg yet. But, if the Hokies have their full outfit and Tulane's down a few guys, it should be an interesting game. I think the line is like Virginia Tech -3.5, I saw. Obviously, we got a ways to go until we get there, but that was the initial line I saw. I'm excited for it. I'm gonna try to get down there to Navy Marine Corps Stadium and amazing Annapolis. I love Annapolis. It's a great town and be full of Hokies. So I'm excited.
Virginia Tech 3.5 point favorites against Tulane. This game is on December 27th at, is it 2 p.m. or is it 2:30? 2 p.m. Are you gonna go?
I'm gonna try to go. I mean, 2 o'clock on a Wednesday kind of stinks, but I'm gonna try to go.
Yeah. So we will get the brain trust together, figure out if we're trying to do I got a text from my buddy Joey Sullivan today. He says, hey, are we doing a party bus? Are we doing a bar? What is the situation? I said, brother, I found this out about an hour ago. Not sure what we're gonna do, but we'll try to do something cool. I anticipate we'll get some folks down there. But bowl season is here. Regular season and conference championships are over. We have Army Navy coming up next week. Which will be fun. Any last thoughts?
Army Navy total, I think I was like 24 or something like that. Game's always just a complete mud bowl, but I'm excited for that one. And yeah, I mean, interesting wild weekend in college football. And then obviously now, we've got a few weeks until the games kick back up, watch some college basketball and get ready for the bowl season.
Phildarius Payne, last note, Phildarius Payne will not be back next football season. I saw this from Kobe Crawford. He tweeted this out about 45 minutes ago. I'm curious if he'll play in the bowl game. I'm assuming he does. I actually didn't know he had eligibility left. And then kind of reading through the thread, there was a question about a potential medical red shirt. So who knows? Phildarius Payne, great year this year. Thought he got shafted a little bit on the ACC selections this year. But that is really the only relevant news. To be completely honest, the transfer portal, we haven't even talked about it. Daquan Wright is entering the transfer portal. That's really kind of, in terms of guys that played this year, the only news. I know that we saw, who else entered? Bryce Duke entered the transfer portal.
Every single kid from the state of Virginia that was on North Carolina's roster has entered the transfer portal.
That's interesting too. So we'll see. We'll see. That is it from us. Not sure when we'll be recording again. I know we'll have a preview for the Military Bowl coming out closer to that. If you know anybody from Tulane, not sure. I know a lot of people. I know it's in Louisiana. My quarterback from high school's sister went there. She studied like astrophysics and engineering. Not sure how much. Something like, yeah, I know it had engineering in it. I don't know. Biomechanical. It's some sort of engineering. So anyway, that's a podcast. Hope everybody's doing well. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please leave us a review if you're listening on the podcast. And we will be talking to you all soon. Go Hokies, go sports. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you later.